rules, that sees brave veterans endlessly pursued by the courts into their old age. This can't go on. The ECHR is now being used in ways never intended by its original authors. It should be a shield to protect. Instead, it's become a sword used to attack democratic decisions and common sense. This use of litigation as a political weapon is what I am calling lawfare. It isn't just damaging our security, it's also damaging our prosperity. Today, I'm not talking just about the ECHR. I'm asking and answering a question. What are some of the things that the next government will need to do, things the British people expect it to be able to do, and the very things that governments are struggling to do? But time and time again, when we try and find solutions, we come up with the same obstacles, like the ECHR. And I know many people believe that we should keep pursuing reform. I used to think so too. I fear this is now a lost cause. Reform is not going to work, and I mean this on many levels. We tried that before. 15 years ago, the Brighton process achieved some success, but the Strasbourg court has shown no real interest in fundamental change. Last month, 9 European countries, led by Giorgia Meloni, called for a serious conversation about how the ECHR handles migration. Not radical demands, just a simple request to talk. What was the Secretary General of the Council of Europe's reply? He said, institutions that protect fundamental rights cannot bend to political cycles. In other words, they're not listening. In an interview last night, he seemed to backpedal. But he also said that change will be really complicated. Let me translate that. Nothing much will really change. A week ago, the Attorney General stood in this building and compared Conservatives making the case for withdrawal to Nazis. While he may have apologized, it's quite clear this is what he believes. This is the level of debate and analysis I have come to expect from this Labour government. They chose not to support the case made by those 9 EU countries. They have no interest in reforming the ECHR. They quite like the way things are. And I'm afraid we have 4 more years of a Labour government that isn't interested in solving the problems governments should solve, like deciding who comes here and who stays, how to make prison sentences fair, how to protect our veterans from vexatious legal attacks, ensuring, when it comes to social housing and public services, that British citizens come first, and how to build infrastructure for the next generation quickly without the endless, vastly expensive legal challenges that mean some things never get built at all. Let's start with the single biggest area where lawfare is destroying our country: illegal immigration. Just last Saturday, 1,200 illegal migrants arrived on small boats. It's taking years, sometimes decades, to process these cases, and your money will pay to look after people who have jumped the queue over law-abiding immigrants and those genuinely in fear of persecution. They'll be well looked after. They'll be put up in asylum hotels, forecast to cost taxpayers £15 billion over a decade. Our country has lost control of the asylum system. Hundreds of thousands of people have come here claiming to be refugees, far more than politicians before us ever imagined, almost all passing through neighbouring countries which are perfectly safe. Tens of thousands of them will receive taxpayer-funded legal aid, which is spent on lawyers competing to devise ever more ingenious legal arguments to keep them in the country. One woman, who was refused leave to remain, deliberately joined a terrorist organisation to manufacture a claim that she risked imprisonment back home. A convicted paedophile evaded deportation by claiming he was gay and his life would be at risk in his home country. Every day, we see these kinds of cases reported, and tens of thousands of illegal migrants, mainly adult men, take the risk of crossing the channel in small boats because they know we can't even remove criminals and terrorists. Indeed, we help pay their legal fees to help them stay. I will always defend the support we gave people from Hong Kong and Ukraine. But we cannot become the destination for everyone looking for a new home or a better life, nor can we be the world's softest touch. In some years, our approval rate for asylum applications was above 80%. Last year, Japan's was 2%. Britain is being mugged. Our asylum system is completely broken and will require a fundamental rebuild so that the British government, not people traffickers, control it. That means a total end to asylum claims in this country by illegal immigrants and removing immediately all those who arrive illegally and try to claim asylum. We need a new sustainable system to admit strictly controlled numbers of those in genuine and actual need, with Parliament having the final say, not just on the rules, but the exact numbers coming in. I have no qualms about saying this. I come from an immigrant background, and I know that many people who have come to our country, or whose parents, grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents came to this country, followed the rules and arrived legally. They were genuine asylum seekers. They were genuine economic migrants who waited in the queue. They are furious at being lumped in with those who break the rules. The current free-for-all is bad for integration and bad for social cohesion. It is creating more racism, and quite frankly, I am tired of watching people break the rules and get away with it. The reasons why governments across Europe have struggled with stopping the boats are very complex. They are not because of any one particular set of laws or arrangements. It is far more than the ECHR. The Refugee Convention has an impact. So does the European Convention Against Trafficking. It is obvious to anyone who has looked at this that there is no silver bullet. And every day, the problem gets worse. As the opposition, we have put forward tougher policies on illegal migration. A strict numerical cap on legal migration, zero tolerance for foreign offenders, a deportation bill to remove those who should not be here. And the more we build our policy program, the clearer it seems that achieving our objectives means something needs to change. I have always said that if we need to leave the convention, we should. And having now considered the question closely, I do believe that we will likely need to leave, because I am yet to see a clear and coherent way to fix this within our current legal structures. But I won't commit my party to leaving the ECHR or other treaties without a clear plan to do so and without a full understanding of all the consequences. We saw that holding a referendum without a plan to get Brexit done led to years of wrangling and endless arguments until we got it sorted in 2019. We cannot go through that again. I want us to fully understand and debate what the unintended consequences of that decision might be, and understand what issues will still remain unresolved even if we leave. It is very important for our country that we get this right. We must look before we leap. We must be sure of our footing and sure of where we will land. We start from the position that governments need to be able to make decisions for the public good. And if the public don't like those decisions, they can vote for someone else. That's democracy. What we cannot have is a situation in which people want change and vote for change, but lawfare stops governments from making that change. This isn't an accident. It's 30 years of accepting a legal system re-engineered by Tony Blair, and it's reached a peak under this Labour government. Lawfare is also creating stupid decisions. Only a government led by a human rights lawyer, as the Prime Minister, could give away British territory in the Chagos Islands, pay £30 billion for the privilege, and try to argue it's a great victory. How did we get in this mess? Bad laws passed in a rush. A legal culture that's become more interested in political activism than public interest. Charities and NGOs, who are often largely funded by taxpayers, suing the government to get outcomes they could never secure at the ballot box. Judges applying laws which politicians used to put nice-sounding targets into legislation, resulting in decisions that prevent those same governments delivering what they were elected to do. And in some cases, there are judges on immigration tribunals who appear, from public remarks they have made and from other work they engage in, to have personal views which make them seem not impartial. This whole system needs change. In October, I said ministers needed to be able to make decisions that aren't endlessly challenged. If the law says that the government can't deport a foreign national child abuser, then the law is an ass. And it's time for politicians to change it. The rule of law is precious for Conservatives, and that's why I'm so determined to defend it, not see it abused or distorted through legal activism. Britain has the best legal system in the world. People around the world trust our courts because of the quality of our judges, and that's why it's all the more important that the impartiality of every British judge is beyond reproach. I've seen endless cases of the worst types of criminals, rapists, murderers, paedophiles, allowed to stay in Britain, deportation flights blocked with the support of the current Prime Minister. Human rights laws reinterpreted in exactly the opposite way intended by those who originally wrote them. But it's one thing to see those who break rules rewarded. It's another thing to see those who do the right thing punished. And I'm talking about veterans repeatedly harassed through the courts while terrorists walk free and use courts, those same courts, to sue the government. Under a future Conservative government, this will stop. We are going to fix this. Just before VE Day, I met a group of Chelsea pensioners. They talked about their former colleagues having to give evidence in old age and having to recall in minute detail events that happened 40 years before or risk prison. Morale is suffering, and recruitment and retention are getting harder, just as we need to rebuild our military strength. And it's not just veterans. Soldiers on operations face legal challenge too. We cannot run the risk of our troops fighting a war with one hand tied behind their backs. We are going to fix this. This is not what the architects of human rights law intended. They did not foresee mass migration, instant communication, or international criminal gangs exploiting these rights. And over time, simple rights have been stretched and distorted, and it's been turbocharged by the Blairite legal settlement, by Labour's Human Rights Act, which forces our courts not just to interpret UK law through the changing lens of Strasbourg's living instrument, but actually to change the meaning of some laws entirely. It is Labour's Equality Act that saw the preposterous situation of the Supreme Court having to explain to the government what a woman is. This is mission creep, plain and simple. Lawfare is putting our national security, our armed forces, and our sovereignty at risk. And that's why I'm launching the Lawfare Commission today. Its job is simple: to get to the bottom of what's going on and how we fix them with credible replacements. We are going to have a plan for all the lawfare we believe is holding our country back, whether it's the Aarhus Convention or judicial review. But the first question has to be on the ECHR and setting out a path to get us out if that's what we decide to do. We are asking the hard questions that others won't. We are getting the legal detail right. We're thinking about the consequences for all parts of our United Kingdom and how to protect all our human rights, because that is what a serious party does. It would be absolutely unforgivable for a political party to say they're going to leave the ECHR and then after find that the boats don't stop because they hadn't thought about other treaties in play, like the European Convention Against Trafficking, the Palermo Convention, or something else. Although my whole shadow cabinet will be involved, these are legal questions. So I've asked Lord Wolfson KC and the Shadow Attorney General and Helen Grant, the Shadow Solicitor General, to lead this work. They will be joined by some of the sharpest legal minds in the country. They will work fast, they will be forensic, because lawfare is bad for our security and it is bad for our prosperity. So I've set 5 simple tests. These are the things that a Conservative government must be able to do. 1, the deportation test. Can we take back control of our asylum system so Parliament, not international courts, decides who comes here and who stays? Can we lawfully remove foreign criminals and illegal immigrants to their home country or elsewhere, even if they have family here or claim that they would be at risk if sent home? 2, the veterans test. Can we stop our veterans being endlessly pursued by vexatious legal attacks? And can we make sure our military can fight a future war without one hand tied behind their backs? 3, the fairness test. Can we put British citizens first when it comes to social housing and public services? Because we believe that charity begins at home and those who have paid in should come first, especially when resources are limited. 4, the justice test. Can we make sure prison sentences actually reflect Parliament's intentions? Can we stop the disruptive protests which block roads and emergency services without being told it's disproportionate? And finally, 5, the prosperity test. Can we prevent courts pretending that action on climate change is a human right? How can we make sure we prevent endless legal challenges for our infrastructure projects so that we can actually get things built and control our own planning system? These are not Nazi demands, as Lord Herman might claim. They are basic tests of whether we are still a sovereign nation able to make our own laws and govern ourselves. If the Lawfare Commission makes clear that these tests cannot be passed under the current system, then the system must change. If international treaties, including the European Convention, block us and there is no realistic prospects of changing them, then we leave. No hesitation, no apology. But because it is clear that the ECHR is a major issue, I'm not asking Lord Wolfson if we should leave. That's a political, not a legal question. I'm asking him to set out how we would leave and to consider what the unintended consequences might be, not least in Northern Ireland. If we decide to go down this route, we must do so knowingly. At Conservative Party conference, we will report back on our conclusions. And there will be more to come. Britain is in the grip of two political crises. A political crises, pardon me. A political crisis and an economic crisis. Today, I have focused on the political crisis we face. It is one of legitimacy, of control, of believing that when we vote, it means something, that we are in charge of our destiny. And even if things feel fine for some of us, we cannot ignore those who've been completely failed by the system, like the survivors of the grooming gang scandal, whose lives couldn't feel further from our country's elites. So in the coming weeks, I'm going to set out my views on both of these crises, the two biggest questions which any future government has to answer. I'm going to show you why stale answers from Labour and nonsense answers from Reform, who do not do the homework, will fail. I'll also explain why much of what previous Conservative governments did not work either. We got things wrong too. So much needs to change. So I am changing the Conservative Party. The only way to a brighter future is to fix these crises. If we are to have a country that's more united, more stable, more at ease with itself, then we need to restore real opportunity. The ability of people to make something of their lives. That is not true for many in the UK today, and I'm afraid handing out more benefits to ourselves or to foreign criminals is not the answer to the problem. Our country is not alone in facing these issues. Italy is on the front line of mass migration across the Mediterranean. They're grappling with very much the same concerns. Poland and the Baltic states are reappraising their treaty obligations in light of the threat from Russia. Austria, Belgium, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they've all raised concerns about the restraints placed on deportations. It is clear that the time for major change is coming. We need to be ready. The greatest danger is allowing lawfare to make this country, the mother of parliaments, less fair, less safe, and less democratic. We can do better than this. Britain needs change, real change, not just words, change. We will protect our values, our democracy, our country, and our people. No more excuses, no more delay. It is time to take back control for real. Thank you. So I know I have some questions now from the media and the audience. Amy Lewis from ITV first, please.
Thank you. Yes, looking at the by-election result from last night and Reform once again beating you, how embarrassing is that for you personally, and where does your party take this from here?
Lark Hall is not the place where the Conservative Party fight back starts. What is interesting is how Reform is causing problems for all parties. We live in a very competitive political environment, and we have made it very clear that the situation has changed and we have to be different, and that is what my job is right now, to change the Conservative Party to make sure we can fight in an era of multi-party politics. Tamara Cohen, Sky News.
Tamara Cohen, Sky News. You say you're changing the Conservative Party, but Nigel Farage's party are doing better at the local elections in England. They did better in Scotland, and the public now regard him as more likely than you to be the next Prime Minister. Do you worry it's too late to change the Conservative Party, and how long do you give yourself to turn things around?
Tamara, if there was an election next week, I think the question you asked would be valid. But as I said in my speech, we have 4 more years of Labour. 4 more years of Labour. What's our country going to look like then? The public just removed us from office. So, of course, they're likely to be angry. And what is really astonishing is how badly Labour is doing. That is why they're going to protest parties like Reform. But as we saw yesterday, Reform is not a serious political party. They have made this announcement without doing any work whatsoever on leaving the ECHR. We are a serious party. We're going to do the work. Because when the time comes for an election, the public are going to want credibility, not just slogans. Thank you. Chris Mason, BBC.
Thank you. Chris Mason, BBC News. Kemi Badenoch, I'm trying to unpick precisely what you mean by what you're saying this morning. To be clear, are you saying that, dependent on the outcome of the review, the commission that will be underway, you might actually come back in the autumn and say, you know what, actually, we've got to stay in the European Convention on Human Rights?
Well, this is why I said I'm asking a legal question, not a political question. That's what those 5 tests are. There were many times over the last couple of years, especially with the Rwanda plan, looking for a deterrent, where multiple legal arguments were made. But as leader of the Conservative Party, almost every shadow minister of mine has brought the ECHR as a problem for them fulfilling their portfolio areas. So we have effectively hired Lord Wolfson to be our lawyer and set out what it is that we need to do. And we will say more at party conference on what exactly the plans are going to be. But what I'm not going to do is just rush out with an announcement and say we're leaving when I know that all of the work has not been completed. We have started doing some work and some thinking, which is why we have come to this point. And that's why I'm setting out exactly how we're going to do this. We want to take the public with us. There are many people who hear this argument and think we don't want human rights. That's absolutely not the case. What we want is a functioning legal system and a country that has a rule of law that everyone else in the world looks up to as a shining light. Catherine Forster.
Thank you, Catherine Forster, GB News. Isn't this all much too little, much too late? The public seem to be listening to Nigel Farage. They seem also to be listening to Robert Jenrick. They don't really seem to be listening to you, though, do they?
I disagree, Catherine. How can it be too little, too late? We are not in government. The Labour Party is in government. They're not doing this. Just last week, you heard what Lord Hermer was saying. We're going to have 4 more years of that. Simply shouting out announcements like Nigel Farage is doing is not serious. That's not a plan. Has he looked at all of these conventions? Do they have the competence, the experience, the expertise? We have it because there are many people sitting in this room who tried to do things and saw it wasn't working. And many of these problems have got worse in recent years, like small boats, and we are not the only country dealing with this. That is why Giorgia Meloni is going to the Council of Europe and saying something needs to change. But they're not asking to leave the ECHR either. And what I want us to do is something serious and proper. Just going on TV and making noise is not governing. And quite frankly, I'm tired of hearing politicians make promises that they don't know how to deliver. That is not my style. I am not going to tell anyone in this country that I'm doing something unless I know exactly how to do it. The Conservative Party needs to earn the trust of the public again. And earning trust starts by being honest, showing your homework, and doing it in a way that people have confidence in you, not just rushing out with a whole new agenda. They need to see that the party has changed. That is going to take time, and I'm going to use that time properly. Thank you. Jason Groves, Daily Mail.
Hi, thanks. You mentioned in your speech that the head of this court overnight has said, sort of opened the door to negotiations, saying we need adaptation, there's no taboo here. Are you saying that you think that that's a waste of time?
Sorry, I didn't follow the question. You said, I said at the quarter...
The head of the court overnight has said,
oh, yes,
we need adaptation, there's no taboo here. Are you saying that you think that sort of negotiation is just a waste of time? And can I ask you separately, it's been reported this morning that a deal's been done to send the Elgin marbles back to Greece on a permanent basis. Would you support that?
Right, so on the Secretary-General's interview last night, which is what you're talking about, I looked at his comments, and it sounds like someone's twisted his arm, and he's gone as far as he can go. He still said it's going to be very difficult. That is what someone says when they are telling you, well, you can try your luck, but nothing's going to change. And remember, we have tried this before. That was what the Brighton process was. We won a concession, but the court has gone again and again in the opposite direction to what was settled in that moment about not overriding original intentions. So I'm not convinced. And in any way, if the court starts to reform in 4 years' time and changes things, then fine. But right now, I need to make sure that if nothing has changed in 4 years' time, we are ready. What I'm not going to do is put my feet up and say we'll figure it out in 2029 or whenever the election is. That's not the responsible way of doing things. And on the Elgin marbles, I hadn't heard that. I'd want to see more details, but I've never been someone who thought we should send the Elgin marbles back. Charles Hymas from Daily Telegraph.
Hi. One of the logical consequences of your proposal that there should be a ban on asylum is that you would have a third country to send them to. Are you going to revive a third country deportation scheme, and if so, would it be Rwanda?
I never thought that the Rwanda scheme should have been scrapped. I think everything should have been done to make it work. And I think it is completely crazy that after all the money we had spent to get it up and running, Keir Starmer just scrapped it without having an alternative in place. Third country deterrent is absolutely important. It's what I meant in my speech when I said people need to be sent either to their home or elsewhere. And this is one of the things that we're going to continue working on, yes. Martina Bett from The Sun.
Thank you. Do you see any merit in Donald Trump's travel ban for citizens from 12 countries? Would you ever consider doing something like that if you become Prime Minister? And just quickly, yesterday one of your shadow ministers said voters should give you time because you will get better. Do you feel like you do need to get better?
Okay. So on the travel ban, that's one of the points that I made in the speech, that Parliament needs to be able to decide who comes into the country for how long and who needs to leave. And that does include travel bans. On a country-specific basis, it's much tougher. It's often more vague, but I think there are scenarios where that is viable. That doesn't mean that I agree with what Donald Trump has done. I haven't actually seen the list of countries that he's banned people from. I'm much more focused on what's happening here. And you're referring to what Mel Stride said in the speech yesterday. That's something I've said myself on live TV. People often assume that the minute you come into a job like the Leader of the Opposition, that's it, you're ready to go. It actually takes quite a while to learn how to do the job. And what I have been saying is that every week it gets better and better. Every week I have more experience. And this is what every Leader of the Opposition has found. From Margaret Thatcher to David Cameron, that is what it has been like. So when people assume that what they see on day one is what they're going to get in 4 years, they're completely forgetting that so much happens, the situation changes. In 2019, I'm not even talking about leaders of the opposition here, in 2019, when we won with an 80-seat majority, who predicted COVID? Who predicted a war in Ukraine? And that's really what we're talking about, that with time, there's going to be so much more that people are going to see, not just from me, but from the Conservative Party. But everyone knows that we were down at the last election, but we're not out. We've just got a lot of work to do to win back the trust of the public. Thank you. Paul McNamara, Channel 4.
Hi there, Paul McNamara, Channel 4 News. Look, it's 11 months since the election. You've been in post for 7 months. And on a lot of issues, like on the ECHR, you're still trying to work out where you stand. Now, I know the argument, look, these are such big, grave issues. You want to do your homework, make sure you get the answer right. But isn't there a risk that you're hemorrhaging support to reform at the moment? It came fourth in a by-election last night. By the time you actually come up with what you decide, it may end up be exactly the same as what Reform are already saying, but by the time you say it, voters aren't listening to you and they've already left you.
I completely disagree. I remember when the SDP Liberal Alliance was polling at 50%, and everybody in that party was being told to, to return to their constituencies and prepare for government. Opinion polls are snapshots of how people are feeling. And I have always said that things would be tough. In fact, in some cases, would likely get worse before they get better. There is a lot that needs doing. But I am of very, very strong confidence that the public will see that the party has changed and that we are the only credible alternative to Labour. You talk about reform. Reform's chairman, who spent the last year putting all of his effort, all of his time, all of his money, has said trying to get reform elected is a waste of time. He knows something that the rest of us do not. I think we should be paying attention to that rather than talking up a party that's losing as many people that are coming in, losing as many people as quickly as they are coming in. We need to start getting serious and stop treating politics like show business. Aggie Champ, LBC.
Thank you very much. Aggie Chambray, LBC. You've been very critical of Reform UK today. Can you just explain what your strategy is in dealing with them? Because some, including in your party, think it would be better to just ignore them rather than potentially elevating them. And if I may, you talked about getting better. Is there anything you can point to that you would like to get better specifically?
So on the point about reform, lots of people tell me lots of things. Some people say we should ignore them. Some people want to take the fight to them. Some people want to copy things that they're doing. Others want us to do the complete opposite. My party is still a broad church. What I have said is that there is only one strategy that's going to work, and that is making sure that we have the best product. There's no point fretting or worrying about what other parties are doing unless you make sure that the product or the content which you have is the very best. So let's take it from there. That is what needs to get better. It's not about me growing taller or looking prettier. It is about making sure that what we are communicating represents the authentic, traditional Conservative values. That is what I stand for. I said it this week in PMQs. I asked the Prime Minister what it is he believed in. He couldn't answer. He was looking in his folder. But I talked about how we believe in family. We believe in fairness. We believe that people on benefits should have to make the same choices as everyone else. Talking about our values and principles is how the public are going to understand what the Conservative Party stands for. They thought that we were standing for all sorts of different things previously, and it was confused. It is my job to bring that clarity, and that's when we're going to start seeing a change. The gentleman there's had his hand up for quite a while. I don't know your name.
Hi, Andy Bell, Channel 5 News.
Right. Hi, Andy.
Thanks. Andy Bell, 5 News. Talk to anyone in the Labour Party, publicly and privately, the people running the government, and they will say they're not so bothered about you and the Conservatives. They regard Reform UK and Nigel Farage as the real opposition, the real danger. How does that make you feel?
I laugh when they say that, because I know it's nonsense. They would love to have Reform as the main challenger. They would love that. Reform is another left-wing party. They're arguing for the same things: nationalisation, two-child benefit cap. They would love to have a political fight like that. I don't pay any attention to what they say. I pay attention to what they do. Look at what we have done in getting them to reverse the winter fuel payments. Time and time again, when I asked that question at PMQs, people said, why is she asking this question? Now we've got a U-turn. They've made a whole mess on education. They're losing teachers. Their jobs tax has increased costs for so many businesses. They are closing down. They are ruining our economy. We are the economically credible party. Of course, they don't want to face us. So I laugh because what they're trying to do is talk this situation into existence. Labour is going to be facing the Conservative Party at the next election, and we're going to get them out. And there's a final question from Matthew Saville from RUSI, Director of Military Sciences. Yes,
yes indeed. So the Conservative Party position seems to be that the Strategic Defence Review doesn't go far enough, fast enough. Yeah. What is it that you think should be prioritised, and what would you cut elsewhere in defence or sacrifice in terms of wider government spending in order to afford it?
Right. So the SDR unravelled, in my view, because the government doesn't have a plan to pay for the 3%. They need to get a plan to pay for the 3%. That means a huge focus on the economy. It means making difficult decisions on welfare, not expanding the welfare state. But in terms of our priorities, it's not just about money. It's also about pace. So we want to see a lot more focus on the near-term threat. We've got to fire our industrial base now. All of the visits that I've done, just looking at what's happening in terms of construction, we can't wait for the 2030s. You know, they're talking about maybe getting to 3% by 2034. In my view, that will be far too late. So just a lot more greater focus. So the key point is that so much of what was in the SDR is years away. It builds on some of the things that we did, AUKUS, for example, some of that Pacific tilt. But when you look at the detail, what Labour is talking about is, you know, smoke and mirrors. There's a bit of sleight of hand in terms of how they're presenting those numbers. There's a reason why a lot of the defence and former defence chiefs have come out to criticise it. And that's what we need to get focused on. How do we really tool up our military for the threats today, not hope that we can get there in 10 years' time? All right, I think I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much, everybody.